Now they air with breaking news happening right now in Downey. Governor Gavin Newsom speaking out at the Downey Memorial Christian Church.
He has just stepped up to the podium. He's going to be talking about immigration raids and the fact that the National Guard is scaling back. Let's listen in.
And came into the parking lot demanding she get out of the way, demanding she not film, demanding as if they were running the place, demanding she simply walk away. She knew her rights. She exercised her rights. I think it's important to highlight that. It's one thing to know your rights. Another important and imperative thing to do is to exercise them. And she did that. She videotaped what occurred, and it's an example of what's occurring all over here in Southern California, what's occurred at a level we've not seen in modern times. I just had an opportunity to visit with business leaders, small business. When I say mom and pop, I mean mom, dad, kids, grandkids, generational businesses in Bell. I met one business owner. They've been 20 years in business. They said, we miss COVID. They said it was much easier. They have lost 80% of their business. And they said they've lost something more precious, which really put it in perspective. They said they've lost a sense of community. They said they missed their customers, not the business. They missed the tables being filled. That's what a family business is all about. They're barely making ends meet. They're trying some catering work. They have a 15-year employee. He won't even show up to work. He's here with documentation, but he's scared to death. He hasn't shown up in weeks since 4 raids occurred and nearby. He won't even show up because he's scared to death of being pulled over for simple reason because of the way he looks, because he's being racially profiled. I met a mother and her beautiful daughter. Daughter's going to Bible school. She just got off. She was walking in an ice cream store. And her mom came to me. She says, I'm here legally, but I'm carrying my passport if you need any proof. I said, you don't need to impress me. She's here legally. She's carrying her passport, and her daughter is just coming back from Bible school. That's Trump's America. 2025, Downey and Bell, California, LA County, the most diverse, most populous county, and the most diverse and most populous state in the world's most diverse democracy, the United States of America, in 2025. It's a disgrace. The President of the United States decided to advance his rote cruelty by utilizing the brave men and women of the National Guard as pawns in an effort to theatrically show his strength. He federalized the National Guard. He deployed roughly 5,000 military, not overseas. In fact, his entire first term, the President of the United States did not even send the military boots on the ground overseas. His entire first term. First 6 months of his administration, he decides to send them to the United States of America, 5,000 military. 4,000 federalized with the National Guard, close to 1,000 U.S. Marines. He sent them to a United States city. The utilization rate of our National Guard, less than 5%. You spent hundreds of millions of dollars, wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on this. 5%. By the way, the folks that were taken and brought into armories waiting for a mission assignment are summer school teachers, our paramedics, our firefighters, our police officers themselves. Finally, because of the absurdity of this and the complete incapacity of the Pentagon to reconcile the fact they weren't doing a damn thing, they manipulated this 26% number. It's about 5%. They even realized the absurdity of this, and they're talking about a demobilization of roughly 2,000 of the 79th Infantry. That process will take a couple weeks. They'll go through medical reviews and exams. They'll be in the process of filling out their pay stubs, getting reimbursements for travel, trying to get their lives back on track. We still have thousands of National Guard. The 49th MPs, you know them well here in Southern California. Those are the 49th MPs that spend 45 days up to 60 days doing recovery and protecting the people of Los Angeles. They're still waiting for the Pentagon to get their act together, to end this theater once and for all, this cruelty. It's about terrorizing communities. It's about appearing tough. I've said it and I'll repeat it. Weakness masquerading as strength. Weakness masquerading as strength. And so we're here mindful of people living here. I said to someone, I said, I got it easy. No. White guy, all the privileges. Talking to members of the community, they feel like democracy is already gone. For me, it still seems to be, on life support, but moving along. They feel like authoritarianism's already come to their community. They're not even walking the streets. We were here, not just in businesses that are empty. The entire shopping mall's empty. It's summertime. There was no one till that young woman came in with the young girl came in with her mom. There was no one in the ice cream store in the middle of the day in the summer. One of the most beautiful communities, Bell, in California. Tourists. They said, what happened to the tourists? Not just from Mexico, not just from Canada, from Europe. They said the tourists aren't coming. Wrecking the economy, destroying families, destroying generational businesses. I spent the morning with Officer Cano's family, a CHP officer that just lost his life a few weeks ago. Half of the service was in Spanish. They met in Mexico. His wife, Melissa. The pride that his dad had in his son becoming first-generation law enforcement officer. That's America. That's California. And that's what's being torn asunder by Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. This is about families. It's about community. It's about the sense of place. It's about our economy. And it's about time Donald Trump grow up. It's about time Donald Trump understand the hell he is doing. And so I'm here in front of a church on church grounds, mindful that our democracy is not on firm ground, and mindful of our responsibility to be assertive at this moment, and we are, to support our diverse communities, and we will continue to do just that. The budget we just signed included additional dollars for legal representation. We did a special session providing resources for legal representation. Over $75 million we carried forward from last year for additional support. But we must be vigilant and resolved that as we focus on Epstein, we focus on the next day or distraction, that communities like Bell and Downey are being torn apart because of his cruelty and because of his incompetence. And so that's the purpose of this opportunity to share and to engage and, of course, ask any questions here today.
Governor Newsom, your personal and your governor's press office social media accounts have taken a much more aggressive tone over the last couple of weeks. Recently, the press office called Stephen Miller a cup on Twitter. How do you differentiate yourself from Trump if you're using state and personal social media accounts to name call and attack him?
Well, it's a response to Stephen Chung in the White House and his use of that word. I don't think they understand any other kind of language, so I have no apologies for standing tall and firm and pushing back against their cruelty. And if it requires more clear language, requires a recognition that things have radically changed with Trump presidency, then I will assert myself as I feel fit. And I'll do so with clarity and conviction. The difference between Donald Trump and the Trump administration and the state of California and the work that's being done by many elected officials here is we don't just exercise our formal authority, we also exercise our moral authority.
Governor Newsom, last week we saw that the core civic California City, former California prison, has now been renamed the California City Immigration Processing Center. What is the state of California planning as far as health and safety oversight or other constitutional oversight of that facility when, if and when it reopens as an ICE processing center?
So California, and we had advanced in the first Trump administration, California updated and advanced a lot of its oversight rules and regulations as it relates to the authority of the state that's vested in us as it relates to the specific issue of health and safety. We also had to recognize that we had to reconcile the federal jurisdiction, and there were certain limits as it relates to our direct involvement and direct engagement. The good news is, having gone through a version of what we're experiencing here today, but not at the scale of the cruelty that we're experiencing, that we had updated a lot of those rules and regulations, including resourcing members of the Department of Justice, specifically the AG's office, to provide that kind of oversight. I specifically had on this topic conversations with immigrant rights leaders about what their expectations were in terms of that support, how we can coordinate and collaborate and share information, and that is our intent as it relates to that specific facility as well.
Governor, I talked to Sabrina Medina from Huntington Park today. About 6 weeks ago, her house was raided by federal agents. Today she says her kids are afraid to go out to their house, they're afraid to go out to school, they're afraid to go out to shop. She wants local leaders to have police not be that involved in ICE operations around the city. What do you have to say?
Well, they're not. I mean, under the tenets, the police officers are not to aid and abet.
They're escorting them. Right?
As it relates to the issues of these raids, it's not. It's very clear as it relates to the policies, local policies, which distinguish themselves from state policies. That is not the role of local law enforcement. The role of local law enforcement is to create a framework of trust. As it relates to safety of individuals, be it their state employees, local employees, or federal employees, they have a responsibility as it relates to public safety. So I'm deeply mindful of that. There's a balancing act there. But when it comes to the safety of officers, I wish them no harm. Most of these folks have been conscripted. I mean, the National Guard men and women are heroes. A lot of you were out there taking selfies with them. Biggest issue they had in places like Santa Monica is so many, jugs of water came, so much food came. We were really proud of them. They're the same people. They're just under now the jurisdiction of someone who's unhinged by the name of Donald Trump. And so I want people to recognize that and respect that. So it's about public safety in that respect, broadly defined. That safety includes federal employees as well.
Governor, do you anticipate if there's a problem with, do you anticipate a possibility of a further drawdown of the National Guard and or shipping the Marines back to their base, given the rules that Washington wants as far as the ability of ICE officers to arrest anybody who attacks federal officers? The White House on the 11th said literally anyone who throws rocks, whatever, assaults federal officers, they're freeing up ICE to actually detain and arrest those people for assault. If those rules of engagement hold, are you anticipating a further drawdown because there's no need for soldiers or anyone else to provide any kind of a buffer around ICE officers doing those type of operations?
Yeah, again, the utilization rate, the mission tasking of roughly 5,000 military personnel is about 5%. They claim it's 26.6%, and that's because they're in an operational readiness, but they're in Los Alamitos, an hour and a half away. They're sitting there behind the walls looking for things to do. 5%. So as it relates to the drawdown, they're a solution right now in search of a problem. But more importantly, I think this is the issue that I want to highlight. This is a preview of things to come. If you think this is about California, you are fooling yourself. These are operations you're going to see all across the United States of America. They've tested the boundaries of the law. They've tested the boundaries of public perception and what the public will accept. And they're going to export, including potentially members of our own state National Guard, to other states. So when they draw down and demobilize, the question is, for what? To go where? Under whose command, whose control? And to me, that's a more interesting question, is what ultimately becomes of these members of our National Guard. But look, you recall, we had close to 1,600 officers at certain points at the peak of what was going on in a couple square blocks or a couple blocks in Los Angeles. CHP officers and LAPD were protecting the National Guard. To your question, not the other way around. That's how absurd this whole thing has become. You would think there'd be some congressional oversight, but those guys have disappeared. Speaker Johnson, in name only. We can get to that. Question is how long he'll be Speaker. They're, of course, trying to change the game on that. That's a separate conversation.
Will the troops they use for fire protection now that they're going to be released? What's the plan here?
Well, I want to get them back under my control so we can get them back doing the kind of work to control wildfires, to keep our communities safe, to address the issue of counter-narcotics, to address the issue of fentanyl. I want to remind you guys, I put 394 of your National Guard men and women years and years ago on the border. I've hardly been timid. I've deployed the National Guard in multiple locations, multiple times. Going back to George Floyd, one of the largest deployments in U.S. history. With thousands of them, the 49th Infantry, the MPs rather, that were out there on the streets after the fires. They need to get back doing the rattlesnake teams, which are basically teams that work in partnership with other state agencies and conservation corps and CAL FIRE to do the vegetation and forest management, hundreds of them. So they'll be reassigned when they come back under our control. About 190 were already redeployed. The rest will start coming back as they're demobilized. I want to get them back in our counter-narcotics efforts and our drug interdiction
efforts. All right,
efforts.
you're listening to Governor Gavin Newsom speaking live in Downey.
We start our 3 p.m. news early this afternoon to bring you breaking coverage of the comments. And we're going to bring in our Conan Nolan right now. Conan, the governor in Downey this afternoon did not mince words talking about the immigration raids and the Trump administration. In fact, he used the word unhinged. I wrote that down in quotes here, referring to the president. Said what is happening is a disgrace. What else did you glean from that?
Well, the governor has become the de facto face of the resistance of the immigration and custom enforcement actions here, not just in California, but across the country, frankly. And he does not speak out about this on a daily basis. That would be too much. But I think he's very careful when he calls attention to the state's approach and attitude towards trying to end these ICE raids. Of course, there's been litigation with regard to that. But this was an occasion for him to go to a city, Downey, which about 100,000, 110,000 population, 13 miles to the southwest of downtown. It is 75% Hispanic. So it is there's a very large Latino culture and community there. Just to talk to, as he said in the news conference, of the availability to talk to store owners about how their business is dried up because everybody's afraid. They're indoors. And he spoke at in a church parking lot there, where a month ago there was an individual who was surrounded by immigration and customs enforcement agents. They were on church property, and the two of the church leaders, a pastor, approached ICE agents and said, "You're not allowed on our property." And there was a bit of a confrontation. At one point, one of the pastors said one of the agents, who was masked, heavily armed, with a bulletproof vest, pointed a weapon at her. That's what she claims. There was some video taken of it. She wrote an op-ed piece for the USA Today, which was published this morning, about how church groups need to stand up to immigration and customs enforcement. So that was, I think, the logistical reason for being in Downey, and the governor took the occasion of the announcement yesterday with those 2,000 troops slowly being no longer deployed but being demobilized. That's going to take a while. He wants the rest of them, of the National Guard troops, to be returned to the state of California.
All right, Conan, thank you for that. You've been monitoring this. We've been monitoring this. Of course, he was talking about the impact, as you mentioned, that these raids are having on businesses. One of those businesses, he said, lost about 80%. So that's a lot considering, you know, Bell, Downey, these are smaller areas.
They are, but he amplifies this. This is a relatively small city in Southern California. His argument is amplify that to the rest of the state, and it's going to go national, and that's the economic impact you're going to be seeing across the country.
That was very interesting, Conan. I talked about Southern California really being the test ground here. We're going to get back to you in just a moment. In the meantime, we have other news here at 3.